Zizhi Tongjian Chronicles of Han 2. This video stays true to the original text, featuring readings in both classical and vernacular Chinese or English. This chronicle begins in the year of Dingyu and concludes in the year of Wushu, spanning a total of 2 magnificent and tumultuous years. It was the 3rd year of the reign of Emperor Gaozu, the founding monarch of the Han dynasty, known as the year of Dingyu or 204 BC, an era of shifting winds and clouds. In the bleak winter of the 10th month, Generals Han Xian and Zhang Yi led tens of thousands of elite troops, surging like an iron current toward the east to launch an offensive against the state of Zhao. Upon hearing of the Han army's approach, King Xia of Zhao and Qin Yu, the lord of Qing'an, immediately went on high alert, massing a heavy force at the strategic Jingxing Pass and claiming to have an army of 200,000. The sagacious Li Zhihui, lord of Guangwu, advised Qin Yu, saying, Han Xian and Zhang Yi are riding the wave of victory and have traveled far from their home to fight. Their momentum is so fierce that it is nearly impossible to withstand head-on. I have heard it said, when grain is transported over 1,000 miles, the soldiers will inevitably show signs of hunger. If they must gather firewood and grass before they can cook, the army can rarely maintain a full stomach. Consider the paths of Jingxing. They are so narrow that chariots cannot travel abreast, and cavalry cannot form orderly ranks. Marching hundreds of miles through such terrain, their grain and supplies will surely lag far behind. I beg you to grant me 30,000 elite troops to take the hidden paths and cut off their supplies. Meanwhile, you should dig deep trenches and build high ramparts, staying on the defensive and avoiding direct engagement. In that case, they will be unable to advance to fight or retreat to safety, and with nothing to forage in the countryside, the heads of those 2 generals will be delivered to your tent within 10 days. Otherwise, you will surely be captured by them. Qin Yu, the lord of Qing'an, often boasted that his was an army of righteousness and refused to employ deceptive schemes. He remarked, Han Xian's forces are few and exhausted. If we avoid them instead of attacking, the feudal lords will deem me a coward and will not hesitate to invade my land. Han Xian sent spies to secretly observe the situation, and upon learning that Qin Yu had rejected Li Zhihui's brilliant plan, he was overjoyed. Only then did he feel bold enough to lead his troops forward into Jingxing. Before reaching Jingxing Pass, at a distance of 30 li, the army halted and set up camp. At midnight, orders were dispatched. 2,000 light cavalry were selected, each carrying a red banner. They took a secluded path to conceal themselves in the mountains and watched the Zhao army. He commanded them, when the Zhao soldiers see me flee, they will surely vacate their fortifications to pursue me. At that moment, you must rush into their camp, tear down the Zhao banners, and hoist the red banners of Han. He ordered his lieutenants to distribute a light meal, declaring boldly, "Today we shall crush Zhao, and then we shall feast together." The generals did not believe him, but they feigned compliance, replying, "As you command." Han Xian said, "The Zhao army has already occupied the advantageous ground to build their fortifications. Furthermore, they will not attack our vanguard until they see my commander's flags and drums, fearing that we might retreat upon encountering difficult terrain." He then sent 10,000 men ahead to march out and form a battle line with their backs to the river. When the Zhao army saw this from afar, they burst into laughter. At dawn, Han Xian raised his commander's banners and beat the drums as his troops marched out of Jingxing Pass. The Zhao army opened their gates to attack, and a fierce battle ensued for a long time. At this point, Han Xian and Zhang Yi feigned abandonment of their drums and banners, fleeing toward the camp by the river. The troops there opened their ranks to let them in, then turned back to fight fiercely once more. As expected, the Zhao army completely vacated their fortifications to scramble for the Han banners and drums, hot in pursuit of Han Xian and Zhang Yi. Once Han Xian and Zhang Yi entered the riverbank formation, all the soldiers fought to the death, knowing there was no retreat, and they became impossible to defeat. The 2,000 elite cavalry Han Xian had previously hidden waited until the Zhao army had vacated their camp in pursuit of spoils, then galloped into the empty fortifications, tore down all the Zhao banners, and raised 2,000 red Han banners. The Zhao army, unable to overcome Han Xian, attempted to return to their fortifications, only to see them covered in red Han banners. Terrified, they assumed the Han had captured their king and generals. The army collapsed in chaos and fled. Even though the Zhao commanders executed deserters, they could not stem the tide of defeat. The Han troops then launched a pincer attack, utterly shattering the Zhao army, beheading Qinyu by the Ji River and capturing King Xia of Zhao alive. The generals presented the heads of the slain and the captives. After resting and offering their congratulations, they took the opportunity to ask Han Xian. The art of war states that one should have mountains to the right and rear, and water to the front and left. But this time, General, you ordered us to form a line with our backs to the river and promised a feast after the victory. We were skeptical at the time, yet we actually won. What kind of strategy is this? Han Xian replied, This is indeed in the manual of war. It is just that you gentlemen failed to notice. Does the art of war not say, throw them into a lethal position and they will survive, place them in a desperate situation and they will live? Furthermore, I have not had the chance to train and win the hearts of these men. It is what they call driving people from the marketplace to fight. In such a case, if I had not placed them in a lethal position where each man must fight for his own life, they would never have fought so hard. Had I given them a way to survive, they would all have fled once the battle began. How then could I have commanded them to fight? The generals were all deeply impressed and remarked, Brilliant! This is far beyond our reach. Han Xian issued a solemn reward throughout his army. Anyone who could capture the Lord of Guangwu, Li Zhichi, alive would be rewarded with 1,000 pieces of gold. Someone brought Li Zhichi to the commander's tent in bonds. Seeing this, Han Xian personally untied the ropes, invited him to sit in the seat of honor facing east, and treated him with the profound reverence due to a teacher. Han Xian humbly inquired, I intend to continue my campaign north against Yan and east against Qi. In your esteemed opinion, how should I proceed to ensure success? Li Zhichi, the lord of Guangwu, hurriedly declined with thanks, saying, I am but a captive from a defeated nation. How could I possibly be fit to deliberate on such monumental matters of state? Han Xian said sincerely, I have heard that when the great official Bailey Shi was in Yu, the state perished, but when he went to Qin, it achieved hegemony. It was not that he was foolish in Yu and became wise in Qin. It was entirely a matter of whether his ruler employed him and heeded his counsel. If Qinyu had truly followed your brilliant plan, a man like me would likely have been your prisoner long ago. It is only because he failed to employ you that I have the privilege of attending to you here. Now I offer you my sincere trust and ask for your counsel. I beg you not to decline any longer. Li Zhichi replied, Now, General, you have crossed the West River, captured King Bao of Wei, and taken Xia Shu prisoner. Then, heading east, you took Jingxing Pass, crushing Zhao's army of 200,000 and executing Qinyu, all before the morning was over. Your fame has spread throughout the land, and your prestige shakes the world. Even common farmers have ceased their plowing and set down their tools, dressing in their best and eating fine meals while straining their ears for news of you, ready to obey your commands. This is indeed your greatest strength, General. However, your troops are exhausted from continuous fighting. In reality, it would be difficult to deploy them effectively again. If you now attempt to lead these exhausted troops and station them beneath the fortified walls of Yan, you will find yourself unable to force a decisive battle or capture the city. Your true state of weakness will be exposed, and your momentum will be spent. As the days drag on, your supplies will eventually be exhausted. If Yan refuses to submit, Qi will surely fortify its borders to strengthen its own position. If Yan and Qi remain in a stalemate and cannot be brought to heel, the balance of power between Liu Bang and Xiangyu will remain undecided. This, General, is your current weakness. A brilliant commander does not use his weaknesses to strike at the enemy's strengths, but rather uses his strengths to exploit their weaknesses. Han Xian was deeply inspired and asked urgently, "If that is the case, what should I do?" Li Zhihui replied, "My current recommendation for you, General, is that nothing would be better than to halt your troops and let them rest, while using benevolent governance to soothe the people of Zhao. Let the people within 100 miles bring beef and wine every day to feast your weary officers and men. You need only direct your army toward the road to Yan, and then dispatch a silver-tongued envoy with a brief letter to showcase your invincible power. Yan will certainly not dare to refuse your demand for surrender. Once Yan has submitted, you can press your army east toward the border of Qi. At that point, even the wisest strategists in Qi will be at a loss as to how to plan for their survival. By proceeding in this manner, the grand ambition of unifying the empire can be realized. In warfare, there is a principle of first establishing a powerful reputation before taking actual military action. This is exactly what it means." Han Xian exclaimed, "Excellent!" Han Xian followed his advice and dispatched an envoy to Yan. The state of Yan submitted immediately, like grass bending in the wind. Han Xian then sent an envoy to report the victory to the king of Han and requested that Zhang Yi be made the king of Zhao. The king of Han granted the request. The Chu forces repeatedly sent surprise troops across the river to harass Zhao. Zhang Yi and Han Xian rushed back and forth to defend the region, taking the opportunity to pacify all the cities and towns of Zhao and dispatching elite troops to reinforce the king of Han. On the last day of the 9th month, Jiaxiu, a solar eclipse occurred. On the last day of the 11th month, Guimao, another solar eclipse took place. The envoy Sui He arrived in Zhejiang and was received by the Grand Minister of Zhejiang, but after 3 days, he had still not been granted an audience with the king. Sui He said to the Grand Minister, "The reason the king refuses to see me must be that he considers Chu strong and Han weak. This is precisely the reason why I have been sent as an envoy. If I am allowed to see the king and my words prove sound, they will be the very truths the king wishes to hear. If my words are unsound, then have me and my 20 companions executed in the marketplace of Zhejiang. This would sufficiently demonstrate to the world that the king rejects Han and remains loyal to Chu." The Grand Minister then relayed these words to the king. The king finally granted him an audience. "Sui," he said, "the king of Han has sent me to respectfully present this letter to you. Personally, I find it strange, just how deep is the bond between your majesty and Chu that you are so close to them?" The king of Zhejiang replied, "I face north and serve him as a loyal subject." "Sui," he said, "both your majesty and King Xiang are fellow feudal lords. Your reason for facing north and serving him as a subject must be your belief that Chu is strong enough to offer protection to your state. When King Xiang campaigned against Qi, he personally carried building tools and led his soldiers from the front. At that time, your majesty should have mobilized all of Zhejiang's forces and personally led them as the vanguard for Chu. But instead, you sent a mere 4,000 men to assist Chu. Is this truly how one who faces north to serve another as a subject should behave?" When the king of Han entered Pengcheng, King Xiang had not yet managed to leave Qi. "Your majesty should have mobilized all of Zhejiang's troops to cross the Huai River and engage in battle at Pengcheng day and night. Yet, you commanded a force of 10,000, and not a single soul crossed the Huai River. You simply stood by with folded arms to see who would emerge victorious. Is this truly how one who entrusts their state to another should act?" Your Majesty holds the hollow title of submitting to Chu while hoping to derive substantial security and benefit from it. Personally, I believe this is an unwise course of action for you. However, the reason Your Majesty has not yet turned against Chu is that you still perceive Han as weak. Though the Chu army appears strong, the world burdens them with a reputation for unrighteousness, because Xiang Yu broke his oaths and murdered the emperor. The king of Han has rallied the feudal lords and retreated to defend strategic strongholds like Qinggao and Xingyang. He brings forth inexhaustible grain from Shu and Hanzhong, digging deep trenches and building high walls, stationing heavy forces at every frontier and fortress. Meanwhile, the Chu forces have penetrated 800 or 900 li into enemy territory, forced to rely on the elderly and the weak to transport grain from 1,000 li away. The Han army stands firm and does not move. The Chu army can neither advance to attack nor retreat to escape. Therefore, I say the Chu forces are not worth relying on. Even if Chu were to defeat Han, the other feudal lords would feel their own existence threatened and would unite to save one another. Thus, the strength of Chu will only serve to invite an uprising from the entire world. Therefore, Chu is inferior to Han. This trend is plain to see. Now, instead of aligning with the assuredly victorious Han, Your Majesty entrusts yourself to the crumbling state of Chu. Personally, I find this decision of yours deeply perplexing. I am not suggesting that the forces of Zhejiang alone are enough to destroy Chu. But if Your Majesty mobilizes your troops and turns against Chu, King Xiang will be forced to stay and deal with you. If you can hold him for just a few months, Han's conquest of the empire will be absolutely certain. I beg to return to the Han with Your Majesty. The king of Han will surely carve out land to infect you, and what is more, Zhejiang will certainly remain in your possession. The king of Zhejiang said, I shall follow your counsel. He secretly agreed to defect from Chu and join Han, but he did not yet dare to let the secret leak out. The envoy from Chu was in Zhejiang, staying at the official guest house, and was urgently pressuring Qingbu to mobilize his troops. He walked straight in, took a seat above the Chu envoy, and declared, The king of Zhejiang has already joined Han. On what basis does Chu expect him to mobilize troops? Qingbu was stunned. The Chu envoy rose to his feet. He took the chance to advise Qingbu, saying, The situation is already irreversible. You might as well kill the Chu envoy to prevent his return, then rush to join Han and combine your forces. Qingbu replied, I will do as you advise. Thereupon, he executed the Chu envoy and mobilized his army to attack Chu. Chu dispatched Xiangxing and Long Zhu to attack Zhejiang. After several months, Long Zhu crushed the army of Zhejiang. Qingbu wanted to lead his troops to join Han, but fearing the Chu army would kill him, he traveled secretly along hidden paths with He to join Han. In the 12th month, the king of Zhejiang arrived at the Han headquarters. The king of Han happened to be sitting on his couch washing his feet when he summoned Qingbu to enter for an audience. Qingbu was furious and regretted coming, even wanting to commit suicide. But when he went to his lodgings, he found the curtains, carriages, food, and attendants were all exactly like those of the king of Han. Qingbu was then overjoyed beyond expectation. Thereupon, he dispatched people to enter Zhejiang. Chu had already sent Xiangbo to collect the Zhejiang troops and had executed all of Qingbu's wives and children. Qingbu's envoys managed to find many of his old friends and favorite officials, leading several thousand people to join Han. Han increased the king of Zhejiang's troops and stationed them together at Qinggao. Chu repeatedly raided and seized the Han supply roads, leaving the Han army short of food. The king of Han consulted with Li Ji on a plan to weaken Chu's power. Li Ji said, In ancient times, when Tang attacked Jie, he infected Jie's descendants at Qi. When King Wu attacked Zhou, he infected Zhou's descendants at Song. Now Qin has lost its virtue and abandoned righteousness, invading the feudal lords and destroying their states, leaving them without a single inch of land to stand on. If your majesty can truly restore the descendants of the 6 kingdoms, their rulers, ministers, and people will surely cherish your virtue. All will be drawn to your influence and admire your righteousness, willing to become your subjects. Once your virtue and righteousness are established, your majesty may face south as hegemon, and Chu will surely straighten its robes and pay homage. The king of Han said, "Excellent! Quickly engrave the seals, and then you, sir, shall carry them and depart." Before Li Yiji had departed, Zhang Liang arrived from outside to seek an audience. The king of Han was eating and said, "Zifang, come forward. A guest has devised a plan for me to weaken Chu's power." He detailed Li Yiji's proposal to Liang and asked, "What do you think of it?" Liang said, "Who devised this plan for your majesty? Your majesty's cause is as good as lost." The king of Han asked, "Why is that?" He replied, "I beg to borrow the chopsticks before you to calculate this for your majesty. In the past, when Tang and Wu infected the descendants of Jie and Zhou, they estimated they had the power to control their lives and deaths. Now, can your majesty control the life and death of Xiangji? This is the first reason why it won't work." When King Wu entered Yin, he honored the home of Shang Rong, released Zizhi from prison, and raised a mound over Baigan's grave. Can your majesty do such things now? This is the second reason. He opened the granary at Jiuqiao and distributed the wealth of Lutai to the poor. Can your majesty do that now? This is the third reason. When the affairs of Yin were concluded, he retired the armor and inverted the spears to show the world that weapons would no longer be used. Can your majesty do that now? This is the fourth reason. He rested the horses on the sunny slopes of Mount Hua to show non-action. Can your majesty do that now? This is the fifth reason. He pastured the cattle in the shade of the peach forest to show that supplies would no longer be stockpiled. Can your majesty do that now? This is the sixth reason. The wandering scholars of the empire left their kinsmen, abandoned their ancestral graves, and parted with old friends to follow your majesty, solely because they hoped day and night for a small plot of land as a reward. If you now restore the 6 kingdoms, these wanderers will each return to serve their own masters, rejoin their kinsmen, and return to their ancestral homes. Whom will your majesty have left to help you win the empire? This is the seventh reason. Moreover, as long as Chu remains strong, the restored 6 kingdoms will simply yield and follow Xiangyu again. How could your majesty ever hope to make them your subjects? This is the 8th reason. If you truly adopt that guest's plan, your majesty's cause is finished." The king of Han stopped eating, spat out the food in his mouth, and cursed. "That wretched pedant almost ruined my grand cause." He ordered that the engraved seals be destroyed immediately. Sun Yu commented, "The art of devising strategies and achieving victory has 3 essentials. First is form, second is momentum, and third is disposition. Form refers to the macro patterns of gain and loss. Momentum refers to the situational appropriateness and the timing of advance or retreat. Disposition refers to the reality of people's hearts and wills. Therefore, even with the same strategy and similar circumstances, the outcomes can differ vastly because of the different applications of these 3 methods." Initially, Zhang Yi and Qin Yu advised Qin Xing to restore the 6 kingdoms to build alliances for themselves. Li Yiji offered similar advice to the king of Han. The reason the advice was the same but the outcomes differed is that when Qin Xing rose up, the entire world wanted to destroy Qin. However, now the division between Chu and Han is undecided, and the world does not necessarily want to destroy Xiangyu. Therefore, restoring the 6 kingdoms was, for Qinxing, a way to increase his own allies and add to Qin's enemies. Moreover, Qinxing did not yet possess the lands of the empire. He was giving away what was not his to gain real benefits through nominal favors. However, for the king of Han, restoring the 6 kingdoms meant carving up his own possessions to aid his enemies, gaining a hollow reputation while suffering tangible disaster. This is a case of the same action performed under different circumstances. As for Song Yi's strategy of waiting for the mutual destruction of Qin and Zhao, it follows the same logic as the ancient tale of Bianzhuang stabbing the tigers. If such a strategy were applied to the warring states period, when neighboring states attacked each other without immediate existential threats, it would have been acceptable. The warring states had been established for a long time and had deep roots. A single victory or defeat did not necessarily lead to their survival or extinction. The situation was such that no state could rapidly annihilate its rival. They would advance to seize advantages and retreat to protect themselves, accumulating strength while waiting for the right moment to exploit the enemy's exhaustion. Such was the natural trend of the times. But now, the uprisings of Chu and Zhao are fundamentally incompatible with the Qin. The window between safety and peril can shift in the blink of an eye. To advance is to secure success, while to retreat is to suffer calamity. This is a case where the actions are the same, but the strategic situations are different. In the campaign against Zhao, Han Xian stationed his troops along the Zhi River, and yet the Zhao army was unable to defeat him. In the disaster at Pingqing, the king of Han fought along the Sui River. His soldiers all plunged into the water, and the Chu army won a massive victory. Why is this? The Zhao troops left their strongholds to engage in battle. They advanced when they saw an advantage and retreated when faced with difficulty, harboring thoughts of home and lacking any resolve to fight to the death. Han Xian's army was isolated by the river. The soldiers knew they would perish unless they fought, leaving them with no other thoughts. This is why Han Xian was victorious. The king of Han had penetrated deep into enemy territory but spent his time holding lavish banquets. His soldiers became idle and relaxed, and their resolve to fight was not firm. The Chu forces, despite their great prestige, had lost their capital. The soldiers were all filled with indignation and a spirit of intense fury. Driven by the urgency to save their cause from ruin, they staked their destinies on a single moment's battle. This is why the Han army was defeated. Furthermore, Han Xian chose elite troops for his defense, while Zhao used soldiers who were distracted by thoughts of home to attack him. Xiangyu chose elite troops to launch the attack, while Han responded with slothful and negligent soldiers. This is another case where the actions were the same but the psychological conditions were different. Therefore it is said, strategic maneuvers cannot be set in advance, and changing circumstances cannot be pre-calculated. To shift with the times and evolve in response to changing circumstances, this is the key to devising successful strategies. The king of Han said to Qinping, "The world is in chaos. When will it finally be settled?" Qinping replied, "The steadfast and unyielding ministers under King Xiang, Yafu, Shonli Mo, Longju, and Zhou are but a few men. If your majesty could truly spare tens of thousands of caddies of gold to carry out a plot of counterespionage, you could drive a wedge between the ruler and his ministers and sow seeds of doubt in their minds. By nature, King Xiang is suspicious and easily influenced by slander. They will surely turn on one another internally. Han can then take advantage of this to attack, and the defeat of Chu will be certain." The king of Han said, "Excellent!" He then gave 40,000 caddies of gold to Qinping, letting him do as he pleased without ever questioning the expenditures. Ping used much of the gold to deploy spies within the Chu army, spreading rumors that declared, Generals like Zhongli Mo have served King Xiang with great distinction, yet they have never been granted land to be kings. They now intend to join forces with Han to destroy the house of Xiang and divide the land among themselves as kings. King Xiang, as expected, began to distrust Zhongli Mo and the others. In the summer, during the 4th month, the Chu forces besieged the king of Han at Xingyang, creating a dire situation. The king of Han sued for peace, proposing that the lands west of Xingyang remain with Han. Yafu urged Xiang Yu to launch a swift attack on Xingyang. The king of Han was deeply worried about this. Xiang Yu sent an envoy to the Han camp, and Chenping ordered that a grand feast, such as a tailao, be prepared. As the food was brought in, Chenping saw the Chu envoy and feigned shock, saying, "Oh, I thought you were the envoy from Yafu. I didn't realize you were from King Xiang." He then had the fine food removed and replaced it with coarse, poor quality fare for the Chu envoy. The Chu envoy returned and reported everything in detail to King Xiang, who then became extremely suspicious of Yafu. Yafu still wanted to capture Xingyang urgently, but King Xiang no longer trusted him and refused to listen. When Yafu learned that King Xiang doubted him, he said in a rage, "The affairs of the empire are largely settled. Your Majesty can handle the rest yourself. I beg leave to return my bones to my home." On his way home, before he reached Pingcheng, a malignant ulcer broke out on his back, and he died. In the 5th month, General Jixian said to the king of Han, "The situation is dire. I beg to deceive the Chu army so that your Majesty may escape through a secret path." Chenping then sent over 2,000 women out of the east gate at night. The Chu forces gathered from all sides to attack them. Jixian then rode in the king's carriage, adorned with the imperial yellow canopy and the left side banner, and announced, "Our food is gone. The king of Han surrenders to Chu." The Chu soldiers all cheered, "Long live!" and rushed to the east of the city to witness the scene. Because of this, the king of Han was able to slip away through the west gate with several dozen horsemen and escape. He ordered King Xian of Han, Zhou Ke, Wei Bao, and Song Gong to remain and defend Xingyang. When Xiang Yu saw Jixian, he asked, "Where is the king of Han?" Jixian replied, "He has already escaped." Xiang Yu then burned Jixian to death. Zhou Ke and Song Gong said to each other, "It is difficult to defend the city with a king who has already betrayed his own country." Thereupon, they killed Wei Bao. After escaping from Xingyang, the king of Han arrived at Qinggao and then entered the pass. He gathered troops, intending to head east once again. A strategist named Yuan Sheng advised the king of Han, saying, "The Han and Chu forces have been at a standoff near Xingyang for several years, and Han has often been in a difficult position. I hope your Majesty will exit through the Wu Pass. King Xiang will surely lead his troops south in pursuit. Your Majesty should then maintain deep fortifications and avoid battle, allowing the regions between Xingyang and Qigao a chance to rest. This will allow Han Xian and others to pacify the Zhao region north of the river and form alliances with Yan and Qi. Only then should your Majesty return to Xingyang. In this way, Chu will have many more areas to defend, and their strength will be divided. Han will have time to rest, and when we engage them again, we will surely destroy them." The king of Han followed his plan and deployed his army between Wan and Yi. He marched with Qingbu, gathering more troops along the way. When Xiang Yu heard that the king of Han was in Wan, he indeed led his troops south. However, the king of Han remained behind firm fortifications and refused to engage in battle. When the king of Han was defeated at Pingcheng and his forces dispersed as he retreated westward, Pingyu likewise lost all the cities he had previously captured. Leading his troops alone, he retreated north to station them along the banks of the Yellow River. Frequently moving back and forth as a guerrilla force for the Han, he harassed and struck the Chu army. Severing their rear supply lines, he left the Chu troops without provisions. In that same month, Pingyu crossed the Sui River and engaged in a fierce battle with Chu generals Xiang Xing and Lord Shui at Xiapi, crushing them and killing Lord Shui. Xian Yu, upon hearing the news, ordered Zhonggong to defend Qinggao while he personally led his main force eastward to strike Pingyu. The king of Han seized the opportunity of Xian Yu's absence, leading his troops north to defeat Zhonggong and reoccupy Qinggao. In the 6th month, having defeated and driven off Pingyu, Xian Yu learned of Han's return to Qinggao. He led his troops west, captured Xingyang, and took Zhou Ke alive. Xian Yu said to Zhou Ke, "Become my general, and I will make you a senior general and grant you a fief of 30,000 households." Zhou Ke cursed back, "If you do not hurry and surrender to Han, you shall become a captive yourself. You are no match for the king of Han." In a rage, Xiang Yu boiled Zhou Ke alive, executed Song Gong, and captured King Xian of Han, then proceeded to besiege Qinggao. The king of Han fled, accompanied only by Xiaohong in a single carriage, as they escaped through the Jade Gate of Qinggao. They crossed the river to the north and spent the night at a government hostel in Shaoxiuwu. At dawn, pretending to be an envoy of the Han, he galloped into the defensive camp in Zhao. Zhang Yi and Han Xian were not yet awake when he entered their quarters, seized their seals and tallies, and used them to summon the generals and rearrange their posts. When Xian and Yi arose and learned the king of Han had arrived, they were greatly shocked. Having seized their army, the king of Han ordered Zhang Yi to patrol and defend the territories of Zhao. He appointed Han Xian as chancellor and ordered him to gather the unmobilized troops of Zhao to attack Qi. The other generals gradually managed to escape from Qinggao and joined the king of Han. Having captured Qinggao, the Chu forces intended to push west. The Han dispatched troops to resist them at Gong, preventing their westward advance. In the autumn, during the 7th month, a comet appeared near the star Arcturus. Long, the king of Linjiang, passed away, and his son Wei succeeded him. Having secured Han Xian's army, the king of Han's morale and strength were greatly revitalized. In the 8th month, he led his troops to the river, facing south, and encamped at Shaoxiuwu, eager to engage in battle with Chu once more. Xingzhong, an attendant, advised against this, urging the king to build high ramparts and deep moats, and avoid direct engagement. The king of Han heeded his advice and dispatched generals Lu Jia and Lu Wan with 20,000 infantry and several hundred cavalry. They crossed Beima Pass and entered Chu territory to assist Pingyu. Their goal was to burn Chu's stockpiles and ruin their foundations, so that Xian Yu's army would have no food supplies. Chu troops attacked Lu Jia, but he invariably stayed behind his fortifications and refused to fight, maintaining mutual protection with Pingyu. Pingyu took the offensive in the Liang region, capturing 17 cities including Suiyang and Waiwang. In the 9th month, King Xiang said to the Grand Marshal Chao Jiu, "Guard Qinggao with great care. If the king of Han tries to provoke a fight, be absolutely sure not to engage him. Just do not let him advance eastward. Within 15 days I shall certainly pacify the Liang region and rejoin you, General." Xian Yu led his troops eastward, attacking Qilu, Waiwang, Suiyang, and other cities, successfully recapturing all of them. The king of Han contemplated abandoning the region east of Qinggao and moving his troops to garrison at Gong and Luo, intending to establish a defense there to resist the Chu forces. Li Ji said, "I have heard that he who knows what truly constitutes heaven can succeed in the sovereign's cause. A ruler regards the people as his heaven, while the people regard food as theirs." Now the ale granary has been the empire's center for grain transport for a long time. I have heard that there is still a vast amount of grain stored within its depths. The Chu forces captured Xinjiang but failed to hold the Ao granary firmly. Instead, they moved east, leaving only a detachment of garrison troops to guard Qinggao. This is truly a gift from heaven to aid the Han. Currently, the Chu forces are easy to take, yet the Han is retreating instead, voluntarily forfeiting its own advantage. I humbly believe this to be a mistake. Furthermore, two masters cannot coexist. The prolonged stalemate between Chu and Han has left the empire in turmoil. Farmers have laid down their plows, and weaving women have left their looms. The hearts of the people have yet to find a place of peace or certainty. I urge you to swiftly advance your troops again to reclaim Xinjiang, seize the grain of the Ao granary, block the strategic heights of Qinggao, close the paths of the Taihang Mountains, guard the pass of Feihu, and secure the ferry at Beima. By demonstrating such strategic dominance over the terrain, the empire will know where to pledge its allegiance. The king followed his advice and once again began to plot the seizure of the Ao granary. Li Ji further advised the king, saying, "At present, Yan and Zhao are settled, and only Qi has not submitted. The Tian clans are powerful, backed by the sea and Mount Tai, and shielded by the Yellow and Ji rivers. They are near Chu to the south and are full of deceit. Although you have sent tens of thousands of troops, you may not be able to crush them in a short time. I beg to be allowed to take your imperial decree to persuade the king of Qi, causing him to submit to the Han and act as an eastern vassal." The king said, "Splendid!" He then sent Li Ji to persuade the king of Qi. Li Ji asked, "Does the king know to whom the world now pledges its allegiance?" The king said, "I do not. Where is the world turning its allegiance?" Li Ji said, "To Han." The king asked, "By what reasoning do you say this, sir?" Li Ji said, "The king of Han was the first to enter Xianyang, yet King Xiang betrayed the agreement and sent the king to Hanzhong. King Xiang exiled and murdered Emperor Yi. Upon hearing this, the king of Han raised troops from Shu and Han to strike the three Qins, emerging from the past to hold those responsible for the emperor's fate accountable. He rallies the troops of the empire and restores the descendants of the feudal lords. When a city surrenders, he immediately infects its general. When spoils are taken, he distributes them among his soldiers. Because he shares profits with the world, the heroes and talents are all eager to serve him. King Xiang bears the name of a treaty breaker and the reality of a regicide. He remembers no man's merit but forgets no man's fault. Victories bring no rewards, and captured cities bring no fiefs. None but the Xiang clan can hold power. Thus the empire betrays him, and the talented resent him. No one serves him anymore. Therefore, the affairs of the empire will naturally belong to the king of Han. This can be predicted even while sitting down. The king of Han emerged from Shu and Han to settle the three Qins. He crossed the West River and crushed Northern Wei. He emerged from Jingxing and executed the Lord of Qing'an. This is not merely human strength, it is the blessing of heaven. Now we hold the grain of the Ao granary, have blocked the heights of Qinggao, guard the Beima ferry, close the Taihang slopes, and hold the mouth of Feihu. Those who are the last to submit will be the first to perish. If you hurry and be among the first to submit to the king of Han, the state of Qi can be preserved. Otherwise, its ruin can be awaited even as you stand." Prior to this, when Qi heard that Han Xian was about to march east, it dispatched Hua Wushang and Tianjia with a heavy force to garrison Lixia and resist the Han. After accepting Li Ji's words, the king sent envoys to make peace with the Han. He then dismantled the defenses at Lixia and spent his days in heavy drinking and reverie with Li Ji. Han Xian was leading his troops east. Before he had crossed the Yellow River at Pingyuan, he heard that Li Ji had already persuaded Qi to submit, and he intended to halt. The persuader Kuai Che advised Xian, saying, General, you received an imperial decree to attack Qi, yet the king of Han separately sent a secret envoy to induce its surrender. Have you received a decree to halt your advance? On what grounds can you justify not proceeding? Furthermore, Zizhi is but a lone scholar who, merely by wagging his 3-inch tongue from his carriage, has brought down over 70 cities of Qi. You, however, with tens of thousands of men, took over a year just to capture 50-odd cities of Zhao. Having been a general for years, are you truly to be surpassed in merit by a single wretched pedant? Therefore, Xian agreed with him and proceeded to cross the river. It was the 4th year of the reign of Emperor Gaozu, the year of Wuxiu, or 203 BC. In the winter, during the 10th month, Xian launched a surprise attack, crushing the Qi army at Lixia and then proceeding to Linzi. The king of Qi believed Zizhi had betrayed him, so he had him boiled to death. He led his troops east to Gaomi and dispatched envoys to Chu to plead for rescue. Tianheng fled to Boyang, Chancellor Tianguang fled to Qingyang, and General Tianji stationed his troops at Jiaodong. Chao Jiao, the Grand Marshal of Chu, was guarding Qinggao. The Han repeatedly challenged him, but the Chu army did not emerge. Men were sent to insult him. After several days, Jiao flew into a rage and led his troops across the Sea River. When the soldiers were halfway across, the Han struck, crushing the Chu army and capturing all their gold, jade, and treasures. Chao Jiao and Sima Xian both committed suicide by the Sea River. The king of Han led his troops across the river, retook Qinggao, stationed them at Guangwu, and drew provisions from the Ao granary. Xiang Yu had captured more than 10 cities in the Liang region when he heard that Qinggao had fallen. He immediately led his troops back to the west. The Han army was besieging Zhongli east of Xingyang, but upon hearing of Xiang Yu's arrival, they all fled to the rugged mountains and strategic heights. Xiang Yu also encamped at Guangwu, where he and the Han army maintained a standoff. After several months, the Chu army ran short of food. King Xiang was deeply troubled by this. He had a high platform built, placed Liu Bang's father, Taigong, upon it, and addressed the king of Han. If you do not surrender immediately, I will boil Taigong alive. The king of Han replied, Xiang Yu and I both faced north to receive orders from King Huai and swore to be brothers. Thus, my father is your father. If you insist on boiling your own father, pray send me a cup of the soup. King Xiang was enraged and intended to kill him. Xiangbo advised, the fate of the empire is still undecided. Moreover, those who aspire to rule the world do not concern themselves with their families. Even if you kill him, it brings no benefit, only more calamity. King Xiang followed his advice. King Xiang said to the king of Han, the reason the world has been in such turmoil for several years is solely because of the two of us. I wish to challenge you to a duel to decide who is the master, so that we no longer bring suffering upon the fathers and sons of the world. The king of Han smiled and declined, saying, I would rather contend with wits than with brute strength. King Xiang thrice ordered brave men to challenge the enemy, but each time a Han sharpshooter from the Lu Fan tribe shot and killed them. King Xiang was furious. He donned his armor, grasped his halberd, and issued the challenge himself. The Lu Fan prepared to shoot him, but King Xiang glared at him and let out a mighty roar. The Lu Fan dared not look at him, nor could he release his arrow. He eventually fled back into the fortifications and did not venture out again. The king of Han sent someone to inquire secretly, and was greatly shocked to learn it was King Xiang himself. Thereupon King Xiang approached the king of Han, and they spoke to one another across the divide of Guangwu. Xiang Yu again wished to challenge the king of Han to a personal duel. The king of Han enumerated Xiang Yu's crimes, saying, You broke the pact and made me king of Shu and Han, that is your first crime. You forged orders to murder the premier general Song Yi, that is your second crime. After saving Zhao, you failed to report back but instead presumed to lead the vassal armies into the pass, that is your third crime. You burned the Qin palaces, looted the first emperor's tomb, and kept his treasures for yourself, that is your fourth crime. You murdered the surrendered king of Qin, Ziying, that is your fifth crime. You deceitfully buried alive 200,000 sons of Qin at Xianan, that is your sixth crime. You enfeoffed your own generals with the best lands while exiling their original lords, that is your seventh crime. You drove Emperor Yi out of Pengcheng to make it your own capital, seized the Han king's lands, and annexed Liang and Chu for yourself, that is your eighth crime. You sent men to secretly assassinate Emperor Yi south of the river, that is your ninth crime. Your governance is unjust and your word cannot be trusted. The world will not tolerate such a treacherous and unprincipled man, that is your 10th crime. I lead a righteous army with the feudal lords to punish a butcher and a thief. I could send a common criminal to strike you. Why on earth should I trouble myself with a duel? King Xiang was enraged and shot the king of Han with a concealed crossbow. The king of Han was wounded in the chest, but he clutched his foot and cried, "The rogue has hit my toe!" The king of Han was confined to bed by his wound, but Zhang Liang insisted he rise and inspect the troops to reassure them and prevent Chu from taking advantage of the situation. The king went out to inspect the army, but his pain was severe, so he galloped into Qinggao. Han Xian had already pacified Linzi and proceeded east to pursue the king of Qi. King Xiang dispatched Long Ju with an army, claimed to be 200,000 strong, to save Qi. They joined forces with the king of Qi at Gaomi. An advisor said to Long Ju, "The Han troops are fighting far from home and are desperate. Their momentum is irresistible. The armies of Qi and Chu are fighting on their own soil, and the troops will easily break and scatter. It is better to maintain deep fortifications and have the king of Qi send trusted officials to call upon the lost cities. When they hear the king is here and Chu has come to the rescue, they will surely revolt against the Han. The Han troops are guessed 2,000 miles from home. If the cities of Qi all turn against them, they will have no food and will be forced to surrender without a fight." Long Ju said, "I have known Han Xian my whole life. He is easy to deal with. He used to beg food from a washerwoman, having no means to support himself. He endured the humiliation of crawling between a ruffian's legs, lacking even ordinary courage. He is not worth fearing. Furthermore, if I save Qi and they surrender without a fight, what credit will I receive? But if I battle and defeat him now, half of Qi could be mine." In the 11th month, the armies of Qi, Chu, and Han lined up on opposite banks of the Wei River. During the night, Han Xian had more than 10,000 bags filled with sand to dam the upper reaches of the river. He led his troops halfway across the river to attack Long Ju, then feigned defeat and fled back. Long Ju rejoiced, saying, "I knew Xian was a coward," and set out in pursuit. Xian had the sandbags breached, and a great torrent of water arrived, preventing the majority of Long Ju's army from crossing. He immediately launched a fierce attack and killed Long Ju. The troops on the eastern bank scattered, and the king of Qi fled. Xian then pursued the retreating enemy to Qingyang and captured the king of Qi. The Han general Guaning pursued and captured the Qi chancellor Tianguang, advancing to Boyang. Tianheng heard of the king's death and declared himself king of Qi. He turned to attack Ying, but Ying defeated his army at Yingxia. Tianheng fled to the Liang region and took refuge with Pingyu. Ying attacked and killed the Qi general Tianxi at Qianqing, and Chao Can struck Tianji at Jiaodong, killing them both and completely pacifying the land of Qi. Zhang Yi was established as the king of Zhao. The king of Han recovered from his illness and entered the pass to the west. Upon arriving at Yiyang, he displayed the severed head of the former king of Sai, Sima Xian, in the marketplace. He stayed for 4 days before returning to his army, encamping at Guangwu. Han Xian dispatched an envoy to the king of Han, Liu Bang, saying, "The people of Qi are deceitful and their state is fickle. Moreover, it borders Chu to the south. I request to be appointed as the acting king so that I may effectively maintain order in this region." The king of Han opened the letter and flew into a towering rage, cursing, "I am trapped here in dire straits, longing day and night for you to come to my aid, yet you have the audacity to seek to establish yourself as a king right now." Zhang Liang and Chen Ping, seeing this, quickly stepped on the king's foot under the table and whispered in his ear, "The Han cause is currently at a disadvantage. Do we really have the power to stop Han Xian from crowning himself? It would be better to take this opportunity to officially establish him as king, treat him well, and let him defend the region for us. Otherwise, a rebellion will surely break out immediately." The king of Han instantly grasped the situation and, changing his tone, continued his cursing. "A great man who pacifies the feudal lords should be a true king. Why settle for being a mere acting king?" In the spring, during the 2nd month, the king dispatched Zhang Liang with the official seal to formally establish Han Xian as the king of Qi, and then mobilized his troops to launch an attack against Chu. When King Xiang heard of Long Zhu's death, he was greatly alarmed and dispatched Wu Shi, a man of Shui, to go and persuade Han Xian, the king of Qi, saying, Wu Shi said, "The whole world has long suffered under the tyranny of Qin, which is why we all joined forces to crush it. Once Qin was destroyed, the plan was to divide the land according to merit and establish kings so that the soldiers might finally rest. Now, however, the king of Han has again raised an army to march east, invading the domains of others and seizing their lands. He has already crushed the 3 Qins and led his troops out of the pass, gathering the forces of the various feudal lords to launch an eastward attack on Chu. His ambition is such that he will not rest until he has swallowed the entire world. His insatiability is truly extreme. Moreover, the king of Han is untrustworthy. He has been within King Xiang's grasp several times, and it was only because King Xiang took pity on him that his life was spared. Yet as soon as he escaped, he repeatedly broke his oaths and turned to attack King Xiang. He is simply someone who can never be befriended or trusted. Now, although you may consider yourself a close friend of the king of Han, and are exhausting your strength in battle for him, you will inevitably be captured by him in the end. The only reason you have managed to survive until now is that King Xiang still exists. In the present struggle between these 2 kings, the balance of power lies with you. If you lean to the right and support the Han, they will prevail. If you lean to the left and support the Chu, they will triumph. If King Xiang falls today, then you will be the next one targeted. You have an old connection with King Xiang. Why not turn against the Han and join with the Chu so that the 3 of you can divide the world and rule as kings? If you let this opportunity slip and remain stubbornly loyal to the Han to attack the Chu, is that how a wise man truly behaves? Han Xian declined, saying, "When I served King Xiang, my rank was no higher than a court attendant, and my position was merely that of a guard holding a halberd. My words went unheeded and my plans were never used. Therefore, I turned my back on the Chu and joined the Han. The king of Han bestowed upon me the seal of the senior general and gave me tens of thousands of troops. He took off his own clothes to clothe me and shared his own food to feed me. He heeded my words and adopted my plans, which is how I achieved my current status. Since he has treated me with such profound intimacy, it would be an ill omen for me to betray him. I will not change my mind even in death." Please convey my thanks to King Xiang for his kindness. After Wu Shi departed, Kuai Che knew that the balance of the empire lay with Han Xian. He then used the art of physiognomy to persuade Xian, saying, I have read your face, and your rank will be no more than that of a marquis, and even that is precarious. But when I read your back, your nobility is beyond words. Han Xian asked, What do you mean by that? Kuai Che replied, When the world first rose in rebellion, the only concern was the downfall of Qin. Now Chu and Han are locked in struggle, causing the people of the world to suffer gruesome deaths, with the bones of fathers and sons scattered across the open fields beyond counting. The Chu forces rose from Pengcheng, fighting across the land and chasing retreating enemies. Riding the wave of their advantage, their prestige shook the entire world. Yet their army has been bogged down between Jing and So, stalled before the western mountains and unable to advance for 3 years now. The king of Han leads hundreds of thousands, confronting the enemy at Gong and Luo. Though shielded by the natural barriers of mountains and rivers, he fights several times a day without gaining an inch of ground, instead suffering crushing defeats from which he cannot recover. This is a case where both wit and valor are at their wits' end. The common people are utterly exhausted and resentful, with nowhere to turn for refuge. In my estimation, the current situation is such that unless a man of supreme wisdom and virtue intervenes, the disasters plaguing the world will never be quelled. Today, the fates of these two rulers hang by a thread that is held by you. Should you side with the Han, they will prevail. Should you favor the Chu, they will triumph. If you can truly follow my plan, it would be best to let both benefit and persist. Divide the world into 3, standing like the legs of a tripod, so that no party dares to be the first to move. Given your wisdom and virtue, the assembly of elite troops under your command, and your occupation of the powerful state of Qi with the allegiance of Zhao and Yen, you can advance through undefended territories to dominate their rear, responding to the people's desire for peace by calling for mercy from the west. The world will then respond to your call like the rushing wind, and who would dare disobey you? By partitioning the large and weakening the strong to establish the feudal lords, you will gain the submission of the world, and they will attribute this virtue to you as the leader of Qi. If you simply hold the ancient lands of Qi and the regions of Jiao and Si, and maintain a posture of dignified restraint, the kings of the world will follow one another to pay homage to you in Qi. I have heard it said, if heaven offers and you do not take, you will instead suffer its reproach. If the time is ripe and you do not act, you will instead incur disaster. I hope you will consider this maturely. Han Xian said, The king of Han has treated me with extreme generosity. How could I turn toward profit and betray my sense of righteousness? Kuai Che retorted, Initially, when Zhang Yi and Qin Yu were mere commoners, they were friends unto death, willing to slit their own throats for one another. But later, after a dispute over Zhang Yan and Chen Zai, Zhang Yi killed Qin Yu south of the Ji River, leaving his head and feet in separate places. The bond between these two was once hailed as the most profound in the world. Yet why did they ultimately turn to mutual destruction? It is because trouble arises from excessive desire, and the human heart is impossible to gauge. If you now seek to base your relationship with the king of Han on loyalty and trust, it will surely not be as firm as the bond that once existed between those two men. Furthermore, the stakes between you and the king are far greater than those between Zhang and Qin. Therefore, I believe your certainty that the king will not endanger you is a grave mistake. In the past, Counselor Zhong saved the dying state of Yu and brought hegemony to Gojian. Yet after achieving great merit and fame, he was executed. When the wild beasts are exhausted, the hunting dog is cooked. Regarding friendship, yours is not as deep as that of Zhang and Qin. Regarding loyalty, yours does not surpass that of Zhong for Gojian. These two examples are surely enough to clarify the situation. I hope you will consider this deeply. Moreover, I have heard it said, he whose courage and strategy intimidate his master is in peril. He whose merit covers the whole world shall not be rewarded. Now you possess a prestige that intimidates rulers and a merit that is beyond reward. Should you go to the Chu, they will not trust you. Should you return to the Han, they will be terrified of you. With such prestige and merit, where do you think you can find safety? Han Xian replied, Please say no more for now, sir. I shall think upon it. A few days later, Kuai Che returned to advise him, saying, To listen is to observe the omens of an affair. To plan is to grasp the pivot of success. Those who act on poor advice or miss key opportunities yet manage to remain secure for long are few indeed. Therefore, the wise are known for their decisiveness, while hesitation is the ruin of great affairs. To worry over tiny details and minor favors while neglecting the grand strategy of the world, to know what must be done but lack the courage to act, is the root of 1,000 calamities. Great achievements are difficult to accomplish but easy to ruin. Opportunities are hard to find but easy to lose. Opportunity, oh opportunity! It never comes twice. Han Xian hesitated, unable to bring himself to betray the Han. Moreover, he believed that because his merits were so great, the Han would never strip him of qi, so, in the end, he declined. Kuai Che, seeing that Han Xian could not be moved and knowing a disaster awaited him, departed and feigned madness to become a shaman. In the autumn of the 7th month, Liu Bang formally enfeoffed Qingbu as the king of Huainan, establishing his rule in the region as a strategic buffer against Xiangyu. In the 8th month, people from northern Mo and Yen arrived to present elite cavalry to support the Han army, moved by the prestige of the king of Han. The king of Han issued a decree: for any soldier who unfortunately dies in battle, officials shall provide burial robes, quilts, and coffins, and ensure their remains are transported back to their homes. As a consequence, the hearts of the people from all directions turned toward him. That year, Shongwei Zhou Chang was appointed as the grandee secretary. Chang was the younger cousin of Zhou Ke. Xiangyu realized for himself that he had little support. With their food exhausted and Han Xian advancing his troops to attack Chu, Xiangyu was deeply troubled by the situation. The Han king sent Ho Gong to persuade Xiangyu and request the return of Tai Gong. Xiangyu then made a pact with Han to divide the world between them, ceding the land west of Hongdou to Han and the land to the east to Chu. In the 9th month, Chu returned Tai Gong and Empress Lu, then led the troops to withdraw and return to the east. The king of Han intended to return to the west, but Zhang Liang and Chen Ping advised him, saying, The Han now holds more than half of the empire, and all the feudal lords have submitted to us. The Chu soldiers are exhausted and their food is gone. This is the moment heaven has ordained for their destruction. If we release them now without attacking, it would be what is called nurturing a tiger to invite later trouble. The king of Han followed their advice.
启强与作恶，近者雍烟茂，凡2年。太祖高皇帝上之下3年，丁酉，公元前204年冬10月，韩信、张耳以兵数万东击赵。赵王及成安军陈馀闻之，聚兵井陉口，号20万。广武军李左车说成安军曰：韩信、张耳乘胜而去国远斗，其风不可当。臣闻千里馈粮，事有饥色。乔苏后窜，师不速保。今井陉之道，车不得方轨，其不得成列，行数100里，其是粮食必在其后。愿足下假陈骑兵3万人，从坚路决其辎重，足下深沟高垒，勿与战。彼前不得斗，退不得还，也无所掠，不至10日，而两江之头可置于麾下，否则必为2子所擒矣。成安军常自称义兵，不用诈谋奇计，曰：韩信兵少而疲，如此避而不击，则诸侯为无怯而轻来伐我矣。韩信使人监视，知其不用广武军策，则大喜，乃敢引兵遂下。未至井陉口30里，止射。夜半， 传发，选轻骑2000人，人持一赤雉，从间到璧山而望赵军。戒曰：赵见我走，必空必逐我，若急入赵壁，拔赵雉，立汉赤雉。令其皮将传参，曰：今日破赵会师。诸将皆默信，杨应曰：诺。信曰：赵以先据遍地为弊，且彼未见无大将旗鼓，未肯击前行，恐无至足险而还也。乃使万人先行，出背水沉。赵军望见而大笑。平旦，信见大将旗鼓，鼓行出井行口，赵开壁击之，大战良久。于是信与张耳扬弃鼓旗，走水上军，水上军开入之，复击战。赵果空必争汉旗、鼓、竹信耳。信而以入水上军，军皆输死战，不可败。信所出骑兵2000，其共后赵空必逐利，则驰入赵壁，皆拔赵旗，立汉赤雉2000。赵军以不能得信等，欲还归避，必皆汉赤雉，见而大惊，以为汉皆已得赵王将矣，兵遂乱，遁走。赵将虽斩之，不能进也。于是汉兵夹击，大破赵军，斩成安军直水上，擒赵王歇。诸将校守鲁、修、毕贺，因问信曰：兵法右背山陵，前左水泽，今者将军令臣等反背水沉，曰破赵会时，臣等不服，然境已胜，此何术也？信曰：此在兵法，故诸君不察耳。兵法不曰陷至死地耳。后生置之亡地而后存。且信非得素府巡视大夫也，此所谓驱使人而战之，其实非置之死地，使人人自为战。今与之生地，皆走，宁尚可得而用之乎？诸将皆服，曰：善。非臣所及也。信慕生得广武军者逾千金，有复至麾下者，信解其父，东相坐，师事之。问曰：仆欲北攻燕，东待齐，何若而有功？广武军辞谢曰：臣败亡之虏，何足以全大事乎？信曰：仆闻之，百里奚居于而于王，在秦而秦霸，非与于而至于秦也，用与不用，听与不听也。诚令成安军听足下计，若信者，亦以为秦矣。以不用足下，故信的是耳。今仆违新规纪，愿足下勿辞。广武军曰：今将军涉西河，鲁魏王，秦下说，东下井陉，不中招而破赵20万众，诛成安军，名闻海内，威震天下。农夫莫不辍耕事累，于一箪食，轻而以待命者，此将军之所长也。然而众劳卒罢，其事难用。今将军欲举卷壁之兵，遁之燕坚城之下，欲战不得，攻之不拔，情陷市区，旷日持久，粮食单竭。燕既不服，其必拒境以自羌。燕其相持而不下，则留相之权未有所分也，此将军所短也。善用兵者，不以短击长，而以长击短。韩信曰：然则何由？广武军对曰：方今为将军计，莫如暗甲修兵，镇抚赵民，百里之内牛酒日至，以享士大夫，北守燕路，而后遣便是奉咫尺之书，报其所长于燕，燕必不敢不听从。燕以从而东临齐，虽有志者，亦不知为其计矣。如是，则天下事皆可图也。兵固有先生而后食者，此之谓也。韩信曰：善。从其策，发使使燕，燕从风而靡，遣使报汉，且请以张耳王赵，汉王许之。楚数使骑兵渡河击赵，张耳、韩信往来救赵，因行定赵成邑，发兵议汉。甲戌会，日有食之。11月，癸卯会，日有食之。随和至九江，九江太宰主之，3日不得见。随和说太宰曰：王之不见和，必以楚为强，以汉为弱也。此臣之所以为始。使何得见，言之而是，大王所欲闻也；言之而非，使何等20人伏府至九江市，足以明王背汉而与楚也。太宰乃言之王。王见之。随和曰：汉王使臣进进书大王谕者，切怪大王与楚和亲也。九江王曰：寡人北乡而臣视之。随和曰：大王与相王俱列为诸侯，北乡而臣视之者，必以楚为强，可以托国也。项王伐齐，身负板柱，为士足先。大王移西九江之众，身自将之，为楚前锋。今乃发4000人以助楚。夫北面而臣视人者，故若是乎？汉王入彭城，项王未出其也。大王移西九江之兵渡淮，日夜会战彭城下。大王乃抚万人之众，无一人渡淮者，垂拱而观其孰胜。夫托国于人者， 故若是乎？大王提空明以相处而欲后自脱，臣妾为大王不取也。然而大王不被处者，以汉为弱也。夫楚兵虽强，天下复之以不义之名，以其背盟约而杀义帝也。汉王收诸侯，海守成皋、荥阳、夏蜀，汉之粟，深沟壁垒，分足手脚成塞。楚人深入敌国800-900里，老弱转粮1000里之外。汉坚守而不动，楚进则不得攻，退则不能解，故曰楚兵不足视也。使楚胜汉，则诸侯自危，聚而相救。夫楚之强，士足以治天下之兵耳。故楚不如汉，其势亦见也。今大王不与万全之汉，而自托与危王之楚，臣妾为大王获之。臣非以九江之兵足以亡楚也。大王发兵而备楚，项王必留，留数月，汉之取天下可以万全。臣请与大王提剑而归汉，汉王必列地而封大王，又况九江必大王有也。九江王曰：请奉命。因许叛楚与汉，未敢谢也。出使者在九江设传社，方及则不发兵。随和直入，坐处使者上，曰：九江王已归汉，楚何以得发兵？不愕然。出使者起，何因说不曰：事已够，可遂杀楚使者，无使归而即走汉并立。不曰：如使者教。于是杀楚使者，因起兵而攻楚。楚使相生，龙且攻九江，数月，龙且破九将军。不欲引兵走汉，恐楚兵杀之，乃兼行与何惧归汉。12月，九江王至汉，汉王方具床洗足，召部入见。部大怒，悔来，欲自杀，即除旧舍、帐狱、饮食，从官皆如汉王居，不又大喜过望。于是乃使人入九江，楚以使项伯收九江兵，尽杀部妻子，不使者颇得故人。幸臣，将众数千人归汉。汉议九江王兵，与据屯成皋。楚数侵夺汉甬道，汉军伐食。汉王与利基谋扰楚权，是其曰：西汤伐桀，封其后于齐；武王伐纣，封其后于宋。今秦失得弃义，侵伐诸侯，灭其社稷，使无立锥之地。陛下诚能复立六国之后，此其君臣，百姓必接待陛下之德，莫不相封穆邑，愿为臣妾。得意已行，陛下南乡称霸，楚必敛刃而朝。汉王曰：善。去刻印，先生因行配之矣。时其未行，张良从外来谒。汉王方时，曰：子房前，客有为我既扰楚权者。具以厉声与告良，曰：何如？良曰：谁为陛下画此记者？陛下是去矣。汉王曰：何在？对曰：臣请借钱柱，为大王筹之。西汤、武封桀、纣之后者，度能治其死生之命也。今陛下能治项籍之死命乎？其不可易也。武王入殷，表商容之驴，是箕子之裘，封比干之木，今陛下能乎？其不可二也。发巨桥之粟，散露台之钱，以赐贫穷，今陛下能乎？其不可三也。因事已毕，偃戈为宣，道在干戈，是天下不复用兵，今陛下能乎？其不可四也。修马华山之阳，是以无为，今陛下能乎？其不可五也。放牛桃林之阴，以是不复枢机，今陛下能乎？其不可六也。天下由是，离其亲戚，弃坟墓，去故旧，从陛下有者，徒欲日夜望咫尺之地。今复立六国之后，天下由是各归事其主，从其亲戚，反其故旧，坟墓，陛下与谁取天下乎？其不可七也。且夫楚为吴强，六国立者富饶而从之，陛下焉得而臣之？其不可八也。乘用客之谋，陛下是去矣。汉王辍时，屠捕，骂曰：庶如己败而攻势，令去萧印。荀悦论曰：夫立策决胜之术，其要有三：一曰行，二曰事，三曰情。行者，言其大体得失之术也；事者，言其临时之宜，进退之计也；情者，言其心智可否之时也。故策同，事等而攻书者，三术不同也。初，张耳，陈馀说陈涉以复六国，自为庶党，厉声亦说汉王。所以说者同而得失异者，陈涉之起，天下皆欲亡秦；而楚、汉之分未有所定，今天下未必欲亡项也。故立六国于陈涉，所谓多己之党而异秦之敌也。且陈涉未能专天下之地也，所谓取非其有以与于人，行虚幻或实服也。 立六国于汉王，所谓割己之友而以资敌，设虚名而受实祸也。此同事而异行者也。即宋义代秦、赵之弊，与西变庄次虎同说者也。师之战国之时，邻国相攻，无临时之急，则可也。战国之利，其日久矣，一战胜败，未必以存亡也。其事非能急于亡敌国也。进成立，退自保，故累历代史，成敌之弊，其释然也。今楚、赵所起，其与秦氏不并立，安危之机，呼吸成变，进则定功，退则受祸。此同事而异事者也。伐赵之役，韩信军于止水之上，而赵不能败。彭城之难，汉王战于睢水之上，士卒皆附入睢水，而楚兵大胜。赫则赵兵出国迎战，见客而进，知难而退，怀内顾之心，无出死之计。韩信军孤在水上，士卒必死，无有二心，此信之所以胜也。汉王深入敌国，置酒高会，士卒抑郁，战心不顾，除以强大之威而丧其国都，士卒皆有奋击之气，就败覆亡之急，以绝一旦之命，此汉之所以败也。且韩信选精兵以守，而赵以内顾之势攻之；项羽选精兵以攻，而汉以怠惰之卒应之，此同事而异情者也。故曰：权不可预设，变不可先图，与时迁移，因物变化，设策之机也。汉王谓陈平曰：天下纷纷，何时定乎？陈平曰：项王谷耿之臣亚父、钟离墨、龙且、周殷之属，不过数人耳。大王城能捐数万金金，行反间，兼其君臣，以移其心。项王为人，意既信谗，壁内相诛。汉因举兵而攻之，破楚必矣。汉王曰：善。乃出黄金4万斤与平，自所为，不问其出入。平多以金纵反兼于楚军，宣言诸将钟离墨等为项王将，功多矣。然而终不得列地而亡，欲与汉为一，以灭项氏而分亡其地。项王果亦不信钟离墨等。夏4月，楚为汉王于荥阳，即汉王请和，割荥阳以西者为汉。亚父劝与急攻荥阳，汉王患之。项羽使至汉，陈平使为太牢具。举进见楚使，及杨经曰：吾以为亚父使，乃项王使。父迟去，更以恶草拒进楚使。楚使归，惧也。报项王，项王果大疑亚父。亚父欲急攻下荥阳城，项王不信，不肯听。亚父闻项王疑之，乃怒曰：天下事大定矣，君王自为之，愿请骸骨。归，谓至彭城，居发背而死。5月，将军寄信言于汉王曰：事急矣，陈请狂楚，王可以兼出。于是陈平夜出女子东门2000余人，楚因而四面击之。寄信乃乘王车，黄屋左道，曰：时尽，汉王降楚。楚皆呼万岁，之城东关。已故汉王得与数十骑出西门遁去，令韩王信与周柯、魏豹聪攻守荥阳。禹见寄信，问汉王安在，曰：已出去矣。禹烧杀信。周柯、聪攻相谓曰：反国之王，难于守城。因杀魏豹。汉王出荥阳，至城高，入关，收兵欲赴东。袁生说汉王曰：汉与楚相距荥阳数岁，汉常困。愿君王出武关，项王必引兵南走。王申必勿战，令荥阳、城高间且得休息，使韩信等的安及河北赵地，连燕、齐，君王乃复走荥阳。如此，则楚所备者多，力分，汉得休息，复与之战，破之必矣。汉王从其计，出军晚，夜间，与秦步行收兵。宇闻汉王在晚，果引兵南，汉王坚壁不与战。汉王之败彭城，借而西也。彭越皆王其所下城，独将其兵北居河上，常往来为汉游兵击楚，绝其后梁。是月，彭越渡睢，与项生、薛公战下邳，破，杀薛公。余乃使中攻守城高，而自东击彭越。汉王引兵北，击破中攻，复军城高。6月，余以破走彭越，闻汉复军城高，乃引兵西拔荥阳城，生得周柯。与魏柯为我将，以功为上将军，封3万户。周柯骂曰：若不屈降汉，今为虏矣，若非汉王敌也。与烹周柯，并杀聪公，而虏韩王信，遂为城高。汉王逃，独与滕公共车出城高玉门，北渡河，素小修5船社。臣自称汉使，驰入赵壁。张耳、韩信未起，及其卧内， 夺其印符以徽诏诸将，亦至之。信而起，乃至汉王来，大惊。汉王既夺2人军，即令张耳训行，备守赵地，拜韩信为相国，收赵兵未发者击其。诸将稍稍得出成皋从汉王。楚拔成皋，欲西，汉使兵拒之拱，令其不得西。秋7月，有兴备于大角。临江王龙薨，子玉嗣。汉王得韩信军，复大振。8月，引兵临河、南乡，军小修武，欲复与楚战。郎中郑中说指汉王，使高垒深堑，勿与战。汉王听其计，使将军刘贾、卢绾将卒2万人，骑数百，渡白马津，入楚地。左彭越烧楚积聚，以破其业，无以给项王军食而已。楚兵击刘贾，贾折坚必不肯与战，而与彭越相保。彭越攻浚梁地，下睢阳、外黄等17城。9月，项王谓大司马曹咎曰：“谨守成皋，即汉王欲挑战，慎勿与战，勿令得东而已。我15日必定梁地，复从将军。”于引兵东行，击陈留、外黄、睢阳等城，皆下至。汉王欲捐成皋以东，屯拱，洛以拒楚。厉声曰：“臣闻知天之天者，王事可成；王者以民为天，而民以食为天。夫敖仓，天下转输久矣，臣闻其下乃有藏粟甚多。楚人拔荥阳，不坚守敖仓，乃引而东，令士卒分守成皋，此乃天所以资汉也。方今楚意取而汉反却，自夺其变，臣妾以为过矣。且两雄不俱力，楚汉久相持不绝，海内摇荡，农夫市垒，红女下击，天下之心未有所定也。愿足下急复进兵，收取荥阳，据敖仓之粟，塞成皋之险，渡太行之道，据飞狐之口，守白马之津，以示诸侯行治之事，则天下之所归矣。”王从之，乃复谋取敖仓。时其又说王曰：“方今燕、赵已定，围其未下，诸田宗强、富海、代、组合、冀南进于楚，人多便诈。足下虽遣数万师，未可以岁月破也。臣景德奉明诏说齐王，使为汉而称东藩。”上曰：“善。”乃使厉声说齐王曰：“王知天下之所归乎？”王曰：“不知也。”天下何所归？厉声曰：“归汉。”曰：“先生何以言之？”曰：“汉王先入咸阳，项王复曰：王之汉中。项王迁杀义帝，汉王闻之，其属汉之兵击3秦，出关而择义帝之处，收天下之兵，立诸侯之后，将成即以侯其将，得禄即以分其事，与天下同其利，侯迎贤才皆乐为之用。项王有备曰之。明杀义帝之时，愚人之功无所记，愚人之罪无所忘，战胜而不得其赏，拔城而不得其封，非项氏莫得用事，天下叛之，贤才怨之，而莫为之用。故天下之事归于汉王，可作而策也。夫汉王发蜀，汉定3秦，设西河，破北魏，出井陉，诸城安君，此非人之力也，天之福也。今以据敖仓之粟，塞成皋之险，守白马之津，渡太行之板，据飞狐之口，天下后服者先亡矣。王即先下汉王，其国可得而保也；不然，为王可立而待也。先是，其闻韩信且东兵，使华无伤，田谢将重兵屯历下，以拒汉。及那厉声之言，前时与汉平，乃罢历下守战备，与厉声日纵酒为乐。韩信引兵东，未渡平原，闻厉即以说下齐，谕旨。便是蒯彻说信曰：“将军受诏击齐，而汉独发监使下齐，宁有诏旨将军乎？何以得无形也？且厉声一事，服饰调3寸之舌，下齐70余城，将军以数万众，遂于乃下诏50余城。为将数岁，反不如一数如之功乎？”于是信然之，遂渡河。太祖高皇帝上之下4年，戊戌，公元前203年冬10月，信袭破其立下军，遂至临淄。齐王以厉声为卖己，乃烹之，引兵东走高密，使之楚请救。田横走鄱阳，守乡田光走城阳，将军田季军于胶东。楚大司马就守成皋，汉数挑战，楚军不出，使人辱之，数日就怒，渡兵泗水。士卒半渡，汉击之，大破楚军，尽得楚国金玉、货禄，救及司马欣，皆自井泗水上。汉王引兵渡河，复取成皋，军广武，救敖仓市。项羽下梁地10余城，闻成皋破，乃引兵还。 汉军方围中离没于荥阳东，文与至进走险阻，与义军广武，与汉相守。数月，楚军食少，项王患之，谓高祖至太公其上，告汉王曰：今不及下，吾烹太公。汉王曰：吾与据北面受命怀王，约为兄弟，吾翁即若翁，必欲烹而翁，幸分我一杯羹。项王怒，欲杀之。项伯曰：天下事未可知，且为天下者不顾家，虽杀之，无益，只益祸耳。项王从之。项王谓汉王曰：天下兄兄属岁者，徒以吾两人耳。愿与汉王挑战，决雌雄，无图苦天下之民父子为也。汉王笑谢曰：吾宁斗智，不能斗。立。项王三令壮士出挑战，汉有善骑射者楼烦折射杀之。项王大怒，乃自备甲持戟挑战。楼烦欲射之，项王嗔目斥之，楼烦目不敢视，手不敢发，遂走寒入壁，不敢复出。汉王使人间问之，乃项王也。汉王大惊。于是项王乃及汉王，相与临广武间而语。禹与汉王独身挑战。汉王属禹曰：禹父曰：亡我于蜀。汉罪一，绞杀卿子冠军；罪二，就赵不还报，而擅结诸侯兵入关；罪三，烧秦宫室，绝使皇帝冢，收私其财；罪四，杀秦降王子婴；罪五，诈坑秦子弟新安20万；罪六，王诸将擅地而喜逐故主；罪七，出逐义帝彭城，自都之，夺韩王地，并王梁、楚，多自与；罪八，使人因杀义帝江南；罪九，为政不平，王曰不信，天下所不容，大逆无道，罪十也。吾以义兵从诸侯诸残贼，使行于罪人积功，何苦乃与公挑战？禹大怒，伏弩射中汉王。汉王伤胸，乃门卒曰：鲁中无止。汉王病创卧，张良强请汉王起行劳军，以安士卒，无令楚成胜。汉王出行军，极甚，因驰入城高。韩信以定临淄，遂东追齐王。项王使龙且将兵，号20万，以救齐，与齐王合军高密。客或说龙且曰：汉兵远斗穷战，其锋不可当。其楚自居其地，兵亦败散，不如申币，令齐王使其信臣招索王城。王城闻王在，楚来救，必反汉。汉兵2000里，客居其地，其城皆反之，其势无所得时，可无战而降也。龙且曰：吾平生知韩信为人，一语耳。既食于朴母，无资身之策，受辱于库下，无今人之勇，不足畏也。且夫救齐，不战而降之，无何功；今战而胜之，其之半可得也。11月，齐楚与汉家为水而沉。韩信楚夜令人为万余囊，满盛沙，拥水上流，引军半渡击龙且，阳不胜，还走。龙且果喜曰：故知信妾也。遂追信。信使人掘拥囊，水大至，龙且军太半不得渡，即急击杀龙且，水东军散走，齐王广亡去。信遂追北至城阳，虏齐王广。汉将灌婴追得齐首相田光，进至鄱阳。田横闻齐王死，自立为齐王，还击婴，婴败横军于营下。田横王走粮，归彭越。婴进击齐，将田西于千城，曹参击田计于胶东，皆杀之，尽定其地。立张耳为赵王。汉王急欲，西入关，至岳阳，萧固塞王新投溧阳市。留4日，复如军，军广武。韩信使人言汉王曰：其伪诈多变，反复之国也，难边处，请为假王以镇之。汉王发书，大怒，骂曰：吾困于此，但穆望若来佐我，乃欲自立为王。张良、陈平聂汉王族，因父而语曰：汉方不立，宁能尽信之自亡乎？不如因而立之，善欲使自为首，不然便生。汉王亦恶，因父骂曰：大丈夫定诸侯，即为真王耳，何以假为？春2月，遣张良操印立韩信为齐王，征其兵击楚。襄王闻龙且死，大惧，使须台人设网说齐王信曰：天下共苦秦久矣，相与戮力击秦。秦已破，济公割地，分土而亡之，以修士卒。今汉王复兴兵而东，侵人之分，夺人之地，以破3秦，引兵出关，收诸侯之兵以东击楚，其意非尽吞天下者不休，其不知燕族如是甚也。且汉王不可避，身居项王，掌握中数矣，项王怜而活之。然得托责备曰：复击项王，其不可亲信如此。 今足下虽自以与汉王为后交，为之尽力用兵，必终为所擒矣。足下所以得须臾至今者，以向王上存也。当今二王之势，全在足下。足下右头则汉王胜，左头则项王胜。项王今日亡，则次取足下。足下与项王有故，何不反汉与楚联合，参奋天下王之？今是此时，而自必于汉以击楚，且为智者，故若此乎？韩信谢曰：臣是项王，官不过郎中，位不过执戟，言不听，话不用，故被楚而归汉。汉王授我上将军印，与我数万众，解依我，推使我，言听计用，故无得以至于此。夫人身亲我，我备之不降，虽死不义。幸为信谢项王。武社已去，蒯彻之天下全在信，乃以乡人之术说信曰：仆将军之面，不过封侯，又为不安；将军之辈，贵乃不可言。韩信曰：何谓也？蒯彻曰：天下初发难也，忧在亡秦而已。今楚汉纷争，使天下之人肝胆涂地，父子抱骸。古于中也，不可胜数。楚人起彭城，转斗逐北，成立席卷，威震天下。然兵困于京，所之间破西山而不能进者，3年于此矣。汉王将数10万之众据巩洛，阻山河之险，1日数战，无尺寸之功，折北不救。此所谓智勇拒困者也。百姓罢及愿望，无所归矣。以臣料之，其是非天下之贤圣，故不能息天下之祸。当今良主之命，陷于足下，足下为汉则汉胜，于楚则楚胜。诚能听臣之计，莫若两立而俱存之，参奋天下，鼎足而居，其势莫敢先动。夫以足下之贤圣，有甲兵之具，具强齐、从赵、燕，出空虚之地而治其后，因民之欲，西乡为百姓请命，则天下风走而响应矣，孰敢不听？哥大若强以立诸侯，诸侯以立，天下弗听，而归得于其。按其之故，有交泗之地，深拱揖让，则天下之君王相率而朝于其矣。盖闻天与弗取，反受其咎；时至不行，反受其殃。愿足下孰虑之？韩信曰：汉王遇我甚厚，吾岂可相立而备义乎？蒯生曰：使常山王成安君为布衣使，项羽为文景之交，后征张衍、陈泽之事，常山王杀成安君止水之难，投足矣。绰此二人相与，天下至欢也。然而足向秦者何也？患生于多欲而人心难测也。今足下欲行忠信以交于汉王，必不能顾于二君之相与也，而是多大于张衍、陈泽者，故臣以为足下必汉王之不危己，亦勿矣。大夫种存王岳，罢巨剑，立功成名而身死亡，也受劲儿猎狗烹。夫以交友言之，则不如张耳之与成安君者帖；以忠信言之，则不过大夫种之于巨剑也。此二者足以观矣。愿足下深虑之。且臣闻勇略镇主者深威，功盖天下者不赏。今足下待镇主之威，挟不赏之功，归楚，楚人不信；归汉，汉人震恐。足下欲持是安归乎？韩信谢曰：先生且休矣，吾将念。后数日，蒯彻复说曰：夫听者，事之后也；记者，事之基也。听过记师而能久安者先矣。故知者，决之断也；疑者，事之害也。沈毫厘之小计，宜天下之大术，至诚知之，绝弗敢行者，百世之祸也。夫攻者，难成而易败；识者，难得而易失也。识乎识，不再来。韩信犹豫，不忍背汉，又自以功多，汉中不夺我旗，遂谢。蒯彻因去，杨狂为乌。秋7月，厉秦部为淮南王。8月，北河燕人来致萧齐助汉。汉王下令，军士不幸死者，立为衣清官敛，转送其家。四方归心焉。是岁，以中尉周昌为御史大夫。昌，科从弟也。项羽自知少助，时近，韩信又进兵击楚，与患之。汉简侯公说与请太公，虞乃与汉曰：中分天下，割鸿沟以西为汉，以东为楚。9月，楚归太公，吕后引兵借而东归。汉王欲西归，张良、陈平说曰：汉有天下太半，而诸侯皆附，楚兵疲食尽，此天王之时也。今是伏击，此所谓养虎自遗患也。汉王从之。
Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. More videos available in the playlist collections. Matching ebook included. If you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know.